At approximately 11:40 p.m. on Sunday, April 14, 1912, the RMS Titanic struck an iceberg during its maiden voyage from Southampton, England to New York City. Just moments before this fateful impact, the Titanic was considered to be the largest, fastest, and most luxurious ship of its time, and it held 22 passengers, from some of the richest people in the world, like John Jacob Astor, to immigrants hailing from countries like Ireland, Russia, China, and Syria, who had saved their pennies in order to purchase a third-class ticket on the Ship of Dreams, with the hope of starting a new life in America. After the giant ship made contact with that iceberg, it took just 2 hours and 40 minutes to slip beneath the surface, still holding all but 700 of the roughly 2,200 souls on board. To this day, the tragedy of the Titanic remains the deadliest peacetime sinking of an ocean liner or cruise ship, and its name is synonymous with disaster and catastrophe. And as we speak, United States and Canadian search and rescue crews are desperately looking for a 22-foot submersible called the Titan, which set off on the morning of Sunday, June 18th, with 5 people on board to explore the wreckage of the Titanic, located about 370 miles off the coast of Newfoundland, Canada, in the North Atlantic Ocean, an area that is known to be the deepest, darkest place on the planet, and one of the most inaccessible places on Earth. As the days pass, hope for those above the water is dwindling by the minute, and oxygen for those who are thousands of feet under the ocean is also running out.
Interest in the Titanic is the reason we go there, because people are willing to fund this kind of exploration and science, and that gives a completely different research component that almost nowhere else in the deep ocean can you get funding to go back every year for decades and see how coral reefs develop and see how metals decay and see how currents change. I mean, that just, you can't justify that. No government will pay for that. Nobody wants to go back to just some old reef, but people do want to go back to the Titanic, and that's why we go, is because people want to go.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and thank you for joining me for another strange and unusual video. And unlike most videos in this series, what we're talking about today is currently happening, and I personally cannot take my eyes off the news as new information comes out and as the story develops. As someone who's been obsessed with the Titanic since I was like 6 years old, I'm serious. I've read every book, watched every documentary. I have Google alerts for anything concerning that topic setup, which means as soon as the media started reporting on this story, I was getting notified this past weekend, I think Sunday evening. There's a lot to talk about here, a lot to wonder about, a lot to learn. So let's get started. Currently, I'm recording this on Wednesday, June 21st. This submarine has been missing since Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. So it's been a long time. They are running out of oxygen. I feel like at this point, depending on what things they've done to conserve the oxygen on the submersible, they probably don't have any left. It's just very sad. It's very tragic. I'm really concerned about these people, and I'm concerned that they won't be found. And even if they are found, even if the submersible is found, there's just very little chance that anybody's going to be able to get to it or get it open. And there's a lot of reasons for this. And yeah, we have a lot to talk about. So the information in this video is going to be current up until Wednesday, June 21st. And if things happen afterwards, I will update you. But as of now, everything is current in this video as of Wednesday, June 21st. So before we jump in, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, Magellan TV. If you're like me and you want to devour everything you can about a specific topic or subject, you will love Magellan TV, a new kind of documentary streaming service that is both educational and entertaining. To keep consistent with this week's topic, I watched Saving the Titanic on Magellan TV. It's an award-winning, lavish docudrama that tells the stories of the Titanic's engineers, stokers, and firemen during the ship's final hours. It shows you the bravery of the men who fought to hold back the sea and keep the ship running even when they knew all was lost. And I actually got a little emotional while watching this because it is a very sad story, but it's also one of those things that shows you what human beings are capable of. You know, how yes, they can be selfish and evil, but they can also be selfless and show more courage and resilience than they ever thought possible. It gave me a lot of hope, even though it was literally, like, these people were literally in a hopeless situation. It gave me hope, I guess, for humanity. It made me feel, happy and a little sad. And it's also beautifully filmed and full of little tidbits that I'd never heard of before, which I loved and which I was able to add to my expansive Titanic folder in the filing cabinet of my brain. You can watch Saving the Titanic and so many other films like it on Magellan TV right now for free for 30 days. All you have to do is click the link in the description box and start watching. There are no strings attached. You don't have to keep your subscription after the 30 days, but I think you'll have a hard time letting it go because Magellan TV has so many great documentary films and series. I also love that they add 15 to 20 hours of new content every single week. So every time I open Magellan TV up on my phone, tablet, or computer, I'm greeted with a plethora of new things that I cannot wait to watch. You can also watch Magellan TV on many other platforms like Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Google Play, and iOS, and Magellan TV has films and series in every genre, from true crime to history, science, nature, even travel. So go to the description box and click on the link so you can try Magellan TV out for yourself right now for free for 30 days. Thank you so much to Magellan TV for sponsoring today's video, and let's dive in. On Friday, June 16th, 2023, Canadian expedition ship, the Polar Prince, departed from St. John's in Newfoundland, headed for the location of the Titanic wreckage. On Sunday, June 18th, at approximately 4 a.m., Ocean Gate CEO and founder Stockton Rush and 4 other passengers boarded a cutting-edge submersible called the Titan, and they were lowered into the cold, dark waters of the North Atlantic Ocean. The descent of the sub to the location of the Titanic should have taken about, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And the Titan should have been communicating with their surface crew on the Polar Prince every 15 minutes, more frequently if needed. See, the thing is, the Titan didn't use GPS for navigation. So they didn't have GPS on board where they could navigate to the wreckage. They needed to communicate with their team on the surface using text messages that were sent via a USB-L acoustic system. Now, just a week before this expedition, OceanGate had tweeted out, quote, "Without any cell towers in the middle of the ocean, we are relying on Starlink to provide the communication we require throughout this year's 2023 Titanic expeditions," end quote. So, we don't know if they were using Starlink on this mission. We don't know what was happening or how they were communicating via text. But what we do know is about an hour and 45 minutes into their descent, so about 3/4 of the way down to the wreckage, the Titan lost contact with its crew on the surface. And there's been no sign of the submersible or its passengers since then. Besides Stockton Rush, the CEO of OceanGate, who built the submarine, the other 4 passengers have been identified as of yesterday. So Tuesday, the 20th, they identified the rest of the passengers. And those passengers are 48-year-old Pakistani businessman Shahzad Dawood and his 19-year-old son Suleiman. These 2 men came from one of the wealthiest families in Pakistan, with the majority of the family wealth coming from Dawood Hercules Corporation Limited, and apparently that company invests in agriculture, industries, and the health sector. Shahzad also sat on the board of trustees for the California-based SETI Institute, which searches for extraterrestrial intelligence. Also on board were 2 men who are no strangers to risk and adventure. 58-year-old British businessman, explorer, and billionaire Hamish Harding, who's the chairman of Action Aviation, a private plane firm, and who's been described as being a living legend of aviation. Hamish has previously traveled in the Challenger deep to the bottom of the ocean. He's also traveled on Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin trip into space. So this man's been to the deepest part of the ocean. I think he was in the Mariana Trench, and he's been to space. And he holds 3 Guinness World Records, one of them being for the longest trip at full ocean depth. And lastly, French maritime expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet, who is known as Mr. Titanic. He's supposed to be like one of the foremost experts on the Titanic in the world, and he's been on over 35 dives to the ship's wreckage. This entire story really begins with the privately owned company based out of Everett, Washington, called OceanGate, Inc. OceanGate was founded by successful businessman and aerospace engineer Stockton Rush, who acts as the company's CEO. According to a 2019 article in Smithsonian Magazine, quote, Rush wants to do for deep ocean exploration what Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk are doing for space travel. By taking well-heeled tourists to the deep, Rush hopes to use private enterprise to spur advances in the long-neglected field of underwater exploratory technology and reveal some secrets of the great blue unknown. End quote. So the story with Stockton Rush is that he really wanted to be an astronaut when he was a kid, growing up in San Francisco to a very wealthy family. In 1980, he got his pilot's license, and in 1981, Rush became the youngest jet transport-rated pilot in the world when he obtained his DC-8 type captain's rating at the age of 19. Sadly, his eyesight wasn't good enough for space travel, but he had been an avid scuba diver since his teens, and he loved checking out all of the hidden secrets that could be found under the sea. However, Stockton Rush felt there had to be a better way to take in all of that beauty and wonder and to research all of the different flora and fauna under the sea. But he wanted to do it from a more comfortable environment. He didn't like the cold. He didn't like the cold wetsuit and taking it on and off and all the equipment you needed. He wanted to be nice and cozy, sipping hot cocoa in a submarine. So he set out to rent or buy one. And that's when he found out, surprisingly, there were fewer than 100 privately owned subs in the world, and not many of them were available to charter. He was also unsuccessful in finding one he could buy, but a company out of London did sell him some parts for a mini sub, which he built and completed in 2006. He completed his first dive in that mini sub, reaching a depth of 30 feet. But then he said he caught the deep disease. Basically, he wanted to go deeper. He wanted to descend even deeper, and he needed a submersible that would allow him to do that. Rush also realized that there was a market, there was money to be made for deep sea tourism. And just like, Jeff Bezos charges people like millions of dollars to go into space, Rush felt he could charge people a pretty penny to go into the deep parts of the ocean where very few people have actually traveled. Now, these expeditions and charging people a lot of money to go on these expeditions would financially allow Stockton Rush to develop new submersible technology, and so he started OceanGate to enable researchers and explorers to gain access to the ocean's vast resources. Since the founding of the company in 2009, OceanGate has focused on increasing access to the deep ocean through innovation of the next generation of crewed submersibles. Crewed, like as in they have a crew. And OceanGate Inc. currently owns and operates 3 5-person subs. So when they say crewed submersibles, it's like the difference between, a submersible or a submarine that people can actually go into safely, and then something that's more like remotely accessed, like you can control a submersible with, a remote control from the surface, and maybe there's some like drone or some sort of robot in the submersible that can leave and safely kind of like travel around that deep under the ocean without being completely, crushed and killed like a human would. So OceanGate's first submersible was called the Antipodes, and it could travel to a depth of 1,000 feet, which is still a lot. Okay, most submersibles that are crewed at this point can only travel to a depth of 1,000 feet, even like government submersibles. And there's probably a reason for that, right? Which we're going to get into. In 2012, the company got its hands on another submersible, which they rebuilt into the Cyclops 1, a seafaring vessel that could travel down 1,600 feet. Now, the Cyclops 1 would be the prototype for the Titan. According to OceanGate, the Titan is the only crewed submersible in the world that can take 5 people as deep as 4,000 meters or 13,000 feet, enabling it to reach almost 50% of the world's oceans. Measuring 22 feet long by 9 feet across, the Titan boasts an aerospace-grade carbon fiber hull, titanium hemispheres at each end, and a fiberglass hull insert which shields people and electronics from condensation. This vessel is also equipped with a real-time monitoring system that provides a running analysis of the changing pressure as the craft descends deeper into the ocean, and this monitoring system is proprietary to OceanGate Inc. Like, this is their own technology that they have developed, and nobody else uses it. The Titan can travel at a max speed of 3 knots due to the 4 electric thrusters that are built into the Titan, and the outside of the craft is covered in high-definition 4K cameras, lights, and scanners to explore and document the undersea world. It is said that the Titan's viewpoint is the largest of any deep-diving submersible, and passengers inside can look out through a large viewpoint window as well as watch a live feed from a 4K Ray-Fin exterior camera displayed on a large screen inside of the submersible. Now, this all sounds very advanced and safe. I guess I would never do it because I have claustrophobia and I'm scared of small spaces, and this is a very, very small space inside the Titan. There's not even seats. You kind of just like sit on the floor. I think the toilet is made out of a water bottle and it's not really private. So this isn't a luxurious experience by any means. And like I said, there have been some issues with past missions and with the equipment aboard the Titan, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. OceanGate's website claims that the Titan has successfully completed over 14 expeditions and 200 dives in the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, as well as the Gulf of Mexico. But it does seem like their main business comes from journeying to the bottom of the ocean to view the wreckage of the RMS Titanic, an experience that has been described as life-changing. OceanGate already had several successful expeditions to the shipwreck in 2021 and 2022. They had some unsuccessful ones too, but they don't talk about that on the website. And OceanGate reported that they would continue to return annually so they could document the rate of the Titanic's decay, because it has been reported that the 110-year-old ocean liner is being battered by deep-sea currents. It's overrun with metal-eating bacteria that is capable of consuming hundreds of pounds of iron a day. So since the discovery of the Titanic wreckage in 1985, the 100-foot mast of the ship has collapsed, the crow's nest is completely gone, and the deck where passengers gathered and fought for a spot on the lifeboats has folded into itself and collapsed, sort of. So some have predicted that the ship could be completely gone in a matter of decades, if not sooner. And in 2021, during an interview with CBS News, Stockton Rush, CEO of OceanGate, said, quote, "The ocean is taking this thing and we need to document it before it all disappears or becomes unrecognizable," end quote. So with the help of these wealthy tourists who paid $250,000 a pop for an expedition to the Titanic, OceanGate plans to document the site's sea life, like crabs and corals, since hundreds of species have only been seen living at the wreck of the Titanic, and they're also going to try to get some artifacts, belongings, things on the Titanic. There's still things there. It's crazy. But one guy who went down there said he followed like a stream that was sort of carrying, small items like luggage and shoes and clothes and things from the Titanic, and he followed it because it was like being pulled off the ship, and he wanted to see if he could get it. So there's tons of stuff there that still needs to be collected, documented, and the ship itself, they want to document that, how it looks now before it's completely gone. And they're going to use money from these tourists and from these people who want to go and see the wreckage as a way to continue research, in the deeper parts of the sea. On the OceanGate website, it says that these expeditions will include archaeologists and marine biologists, but they will also bring along roughly 40 paying customers who will take turns operating the sonar equipment and performing tasks on the submersible. They're not going to bring all 40 at once. Only 5 people can fit at any one time, and one of those is the pilot, the person driving the submarine, which in this case, with the expedition that is currently lost, was the CEO, Stockton Rush. As of Wednesday afternoon, when I'm recording this, a desperate search is still ongoing for the 5 people on the Titan who only had enough oxygen to last 96 hours. The Coast Guard has been coordinating with the Canadian authorities as well as commercial vessels to help in the search. They dropped sonar buoys into the water, with the commander of the Coast Guard saying, quote, "If they are making a sound, that's certainly one of the ways that we are using to locate them," end quote. So he means if the people in the submersible are making a sound, these sonar buoys would hopefully pick it up. And France on Tuesday announced their plan to send a ship, which is equipped with a deep-sea diving vessel called the Victor 6000, which is an autonomous robot capable of descending to a depth of 6,000 meters. That ship was scheduled to arrive Wednesday night, so hopefully tonight. Additionally, aircraft from the U.S. and Canada have flown over an area of the Atlantic Ocean that's roughly the size of Connecticut, along with surface vessels that have been scanning the ocean in case the Titan has reached the surface. But here's the thing. Even if it did reach the surface, it's not that simple. I'm kind of panicking a little bit thinking about it. The sub is obviously airtight, okay? For it to go that deep, it has to be airtight. It can't be something as simple as what we see in World War II submarines where there's a hatch and you can just pop it open and put your head out and look out and everything's good. Because it's going so deep, it has to be so much more airtight. And that hatch is secured with 17 bolts from the outside. So these 5 people went in. The outside crew bolted them in. And it is only an outside crew who can remove those bolts.
I can tell you exactly. There's only a few possibilities. So this thing has 7 different ways to return to the surface, different ways of releasing ballast or inflating air balloons or using the propellers. So there's backups of backups of backups. So if it is not at the surface, then only one of 2 things could have happened. Either it snagged on something, like a big fishing net or even part of the Titanic, or there was a leak, in which case it would implode instantly and it's over. So if you want to look optimistically at it, they lost power, but they have 3 more days of air and they're bobbing on the surface somewhere, and we just can't find them because they don't have power.
Yeah, I found it interesting that the Coast Guard there basically said this is a 2-pronged search. 1, potentially 2.5 miles beneath the sea, or 2, maybe somewhere at the top. And this area is so remote, it's possible.
But one problem with what the Coast Guard said was there's only 3 operating subs in the world that can go to that depth. Okay, so even if they find our sub with the ping, with the sonar, there's absolutely nothing they can do about it. There's no way to bring it back to the surface. There's no way to let them escape. That the hatch, by the way, is sealed with 17 bolts from the outside. So there's no way to escape when you're inside to get out without a crew on the outside letting you out.
So you just heard from David Pogue. He's the host of the Unseen Science podcast. He's also a CBS Sunday morning correspondent. And Pogue happens to have firsthand knowledge and experience on the Titan because he was sent out there by CBS last year to check it out and to go down and see the wreckage of the Titanic. And he had a very interesting, if not harrowing, experience. First of all, he never actually got to see the Titanic wreckage because they only got about 37 feet down before encountering mechanical problems, which he said is typical because usually on these expeditions, OceanGate is taking their customers out to sea for 5, 6, 7, 8 days at a time. And basically, you would try to get down to that wreckage every day, but mechanical issues or weather changes may prevent that. So they would just keep trying every day until the conditions are right for going down in the submersible. So David Pogue said that's not unusual for there to be issues. I still feel like I would not want to go onto the submarine if there were issues, on any of those days. It's kind of like being on a plane and they're like, oh, we have to land because we're having issues with the equipment. And then they're like, okay, guys, it's fixed. Let's get back on the plane and go. And you're like, do I want to do that? Do I really want to do that? That's how I would feel about it. But David Pogue's visit to the Titan for a passenger dive in 2022 was a very stressful experience. They were out to sea for days before they were given a weather window that allowed them to attempt the dive. And when they went down, they found out that they had lost communication with the surface. David Pogue said, quote, "There's no GPS, so the surface ship is supposed to guide the sub to the shipwreck by sending text messages. But on this dive, communications somehow broke down. The sub never found the wreck," end quote. So this submersible, when David Pogue was on it, wandered around the ocean, lost for over 2 hours. And apparently Stockton Rush, the CEO, who was also on board, he was like, oh, guys, don't worry about this. This is like normal. We're going to get there. We have plenty of oxygen. Nothing's out of the ordinary. Don't stress. And he offered his 4 passengers a do-over for the following year because they just never made it down to the wreckage. David Pogue was not going to be taking Rush up on that offer because he'd already been scared before they went down in the sub. And he was like, am I really doing this? Like, I could die down there, because you have to sign a death waiver. Basically, you have to sign a waiver saying you understand that you could die. But then David spoke to Stockton Rush, and Rush was like, you're worried about all the wrong things. You're worried about running out of air. You're worried about getting back to the surface. But those are not the things you should be worrying about. Rush said, quote, the things you should be worried about are really rare things like getting snagged in abandoned fishing nets that are miles long in the North Atlantic, or a leak, which is also unlikely, end quote. But aside from the normal fears that a typical person has when traveling in a submarine deeper than any human should go, David Pogue also noticed how quote-unquote janky the setup inside the Titan was, saying, quote, this submersible was made from off-the-shelf improvised parts. Some of the ballasts are these abandoned lead pipes from construction sites. The guy who built the sub, Stockton Rush, told me, yeah, that stuff's all kind of janky, but the important thing, like the capsule that's containing the people and the air, that was co-designed with NASA and the University of Washington. The part that keeps you alive is rock solid. Everything else can fail. Your thrusters can go. Your lights can go. You're still going to be safe, end quote. For just under 100 hours, right? Like, you don't have unlimited oxygen. Somebody should have told him that. Rush also told David Pogue, quote, we only have one button, that's it. It should be like an elevator. It shouldn't take a lot of skill, end quote. So one button to run the submarine, but not really, because he also uses a gaming controller to run the submarine. Here's Stockton Rush showing us how the entire submersible is controlled using a Logitech 5710 wireless PC gamepad from 2011 that you can buy at Walmart for like $40.
Hi, my name is Stockton Rush. I'm the CEO and founder of OceanGate. Let's take a look at Titan. So we're coming into the sub. This is the only toilet available on a deep diving submersible. Best seat in the house. You can look out the viewport. We put a privacy screen in, turn up the music, and it's very popular. We have our control screen here, our sonar screen here, and we can put any image we want in the back. We've taken a completely new approach to the sub design, and it's all run with this game controller and these touch screens. So if you want to go forward, you press forward. If you want to go back, you go back. Turn left, turn right, go down, go up. And it's Bluetooth, so I can hand it to anybody. And it's meant for a 16-year-old to throw it around, and super durable. We keep a couple of spares on board just in case. This is the second year we've been out to the Titanic. We went out in 5 8-day missions. We did about 10 dives to the wreck site of the Titanic, and we did an extra dive on an undiscovered reef that we found. Completely privately funded operation, and we're funded by, we call mission specialists, who help support the mission. So they take quite a bit of money to come and join us. Years ago, the Russians took tourists out to the Titanic, and it was just sort of a look and see thing. We really are focusing on the science around it. We want to document what the wreck is like now, and also try to predict what it'll be like in the future.
Mike Reese, he's made 3 separate dives in the Titan, and he's reported that every time he went down in the sub, they lost communication. And before boarding the Titan, he had to sign a massive waiver saying he understood that he could die on each journey. He told the BBC, quote, you sign a massive waiver that lists one way after another that you could die on the trip. They mention death 3 times on page 1, so it's never far from your mind. So nobody who's in this situation was caught off guard. You all know what you're getting into, end quote. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily true. Like, I get signing a waiver and saying, like, oh, I understand I could die, because you just know that, you know, they're trying to legally protect themselves. Like, the company's trying to legally protect themselves. But I don't think that anybody boarded that submarine with a really clear understanding that they would be going down and not coming back up. You know what I mean? Like, we sign waivers all the time for things. You don't really think that it's going to happen because there's been successful voyages to the Titanic on the Titan before. And so, yeah, you're not thinking like anything's going to go wrong. So I personally, I would love to go down in a sub and see the Titanic, and I might do it if I had the money And I might sign a waiver because people have said that this is a life-changing experience, but I would be stressed and having a panic attack the entire time. I would have to be heavily medicated. But Mike Reese continued on to remark that he thought the Titan was a beautiful vessel, but, quote, "This is all new technology, and they're learning as they go. You have to remember the early days of the space program or the early days of aviation where you just make a lot of mistakes on the way to figuring out what you're doing," end quote. And this is true. This is absolutely true. But usually in the early days of the space program, in the early days of aviation, they weren't charging people $250,000 to like walk onto a submersible to their death, you know. These were professionals who knew how to fly, who knew to manage the equipment, who were familiar with the craft that they were on, and who had also kind of signed up for it, like astronauts going into space who were like, yeah, this is what I've been training for years, and I know what I'm getting myself into. It's not just some like layman, some civilian who's doing it for an amazing life experience. So there is a little bit of a difference there, in my opinion, but okay. Now, for those who are desperately searching for this submersible, there's more challenges than anything else. Honestly, it's like roadblock after roadblock. Any vessel traveling down to the depths of the Titanic wreckage is going to face crushing pressure. And at the location of the wreck, it's said that the ocean pushing down would be equivalent to a tower of solid lead rising to the height of the Empire State Building. So let's say the submersible had a leak, right? Which Stockton Rush says is very rare, but can still happen. Let's say they have a leak. It's over. It's done. They're crushed, right? If the submersible does resurface, they will still face a dwindling oxygen issue since they cannot open the hatch from the inside, which would be crazy to me to finally get to the surface, to be able to see like, I'm on the surface, there's fresh air right there, and to still not be able to open the hatch. I feel so bad for them. There's a man, Pat Wimmer. He's an explorer and a financier, and he told ABC News, quote, "There are very few submersibles in the world that can go down to the depth of the Titanic, which sits at 3,800 meters, which I think is like 12,000 feet. Most can only go down to about 1,000 meters," end quote. Retired Captain David Marquette, I believe he used to work for the Coast Guard, he has said that there are no underwater vessels capable of going that deep anywhere nearby, saying, quote, "The odds are against them. There's a ship in Boston that has the ability to either lower a cable and connect to it, to the Titan, or have a claw that connects to it, but it's still 1,000 miles away," end quote. That ship, he means in Boston, is still 1,000 miles away. He also said that even if this vessel from Boston was able to get there in time, even if they were able to locate the submersible, the Titan, because they don't even know where it is, even if they were able to locate it and lower the cable, it would still be very difficult to get it just right and be able to hook the submersible, especially in time for these people to not run out of oxygen. He said, quote, "You've got to get it exactly right. It's sort of like getting one of those toys out of those arcade machines. In general, you miss," end quote. Marquette stated that if the 5 people on board are alive, they will probably be asked to go to sleep in order to preserve oxygen, saying, quote, "We would put the vast majority of the crew to sleep because that's when you're using the least amount of oxygen and you're expelling the least amount of carbon dioxide," end quote. When I heard this, I was like, are you for real? Can you imagine? Like, you know you're lost, because what's happening here? What's happening down there? Chances are they got lost, right? They lost communication about 3/4 of the way down. Chances are they got lost as they did on the dive with David Pogue. They got lost and they were traveling around for 2 hours. They just weren't able to get back to the surface ship. They don't know where they are. They got much deeper than they got with David Pogue, right? Because they only got 37 feet down when David was on there. They were 3/4 of the way down to the Titanic when they lost contact. So that's concerning. So if they got lost and they just don't know where they are, they've probably been traveling around a lot, just like driving around trying to figure it out. And who knows where they are at this moment, right? But now everyone knows that they're lost or they're trapped. You know, there's a chance that they did get trapped in a large fishing net. There's a chance even that they got trapped in the wreckage of the Titanic. Like maybe they made it all the way down and found it, but then they maybe got caught on something and they were unable to make it back up. So the people on there know that this is not looking good. And now someone says, go to sleep. And you're like, what? I'm not going to go to sleep knowing that I might never wake up, that we might run out of oxygen while I'm sleeping, or that one of you could like kill me to get more oxygen for yourself, because people get desperate in these times, right? Or, these could be the last hours of my life. These could be the last hours of me feeling things, touching things, experiencing things, hearing things, having thoughts. And why would I want to spend those last hours sleeping? Like, I can't even imagine. People are being very mean online. I hate the internet, honestly, because there's people online on social media who are like, oh, that's what you get, you stupid rich assholes. Like, how's it feel paying $250,000 to die in a tin can at the bottom of the ocean? Like, y'all are heartless. Y'all are heartless, okay? These are people who have families, who have loved ones. This one dude's on there with his son, a 19-year-old, who he has to explain to this kid now, like, why he put him in this position. This is heartbreaking for anybody. Two of these men are like amazing explorers. They've achieved amazing things. The amount of knowledge about the Titanic that the French explorer guy has in his head, and it will be just completely lost. Like, this is sad. It doesn't matter if they have money. Like, if you had money and you loved the Titanic and you liked to spend your money on, experiences instead of things, you would go down and see the Titanic too. Anybody who had $250,000 to just throw around would do that. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And not only are you going to begrudge these people a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but you're going to say, like, they deserve to die because they spent money on it? Like, that's heartless, man. I can't even believe that some people are saying that stuff. I don't even get it. I don't get it. We're all humans, man. We're all humans. So many people have their theories about what might have happened, what might have gone wrong. D.K. Barton, he's the first British diver to see the Titanic wreckage. He's made 22 dives to the location, and I believe he worked for the company that's basically in charge of the Titanic wreckage and restoring it and like keeping an eye on it. So, like I said, he's made 22 dives to that location. He's very familiar with it, and he believes that the Titan has lost power or structural integrity during its descent. But he knows the French explorer, Paul-Henri Nargeolet, very well, and he believes that Paul will be a good leader to the others during this time of stress. He said, quote, "He's the kind of man who will keep them calm, but it's not easy in a tube at the bottom of the ocean. It's tragic. He's an extraordinary explorer and an incredible individual, and he knows the wreck better than anyone I know," end quote. Other people have commented on the experimental nature of this submersible, and they're asking the question of why the Titan was allowed to bring people down into the depths of the Atlantic Ocean without being classed, right? So classing is something that happens with ship vessels, and it allows ship owners, insurers, and regulators to know that their vessels that they're bringing out to sea, that they're possibly having passengers on, right, are designed, constructed, and inspected to the accepted class standards. As OceanGate itself acknowledged in a 2019 blog titled, "Why Isn't the Titan Classed?" The Titan, the submersible that they're on right now, is not classed. Now, most marine operators require that chartered vessels, chartered meaning like, they bring passengers around, they're required to be classed by an independent group. So why isn't the Titan classed? Well, according to this blog, because of innovation. Quote, "When OceanGate was founded, the goal was to pursue the highest reasonable level of innovation in the design and operation of manned submersibles. By definition, innovation is outside of an already accepted system. While classing agencies are willing to pursue the certification of new and innovative designs and ideas, they often have a multi-year approval cycle due to a lack of pre-existing standards, especially, for example, in the case of many of OceanGate's innovations, such as carbon fiber pressure vessels and a real-time hull health monitoring system. Bringing an outside entity up to speed on every innovation before it's put into real-world testing is anathema to rapid innovation. For example, SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic all rely on experienced inside experts to oversee the daily operations, testing, and validation, versus bringing in outsiders who need to first be educated before being qualified to validate any innovations," end quote. So basically they're saying we didn't have the Titan classed because it's just too innovative. It's just too progressive and technological for anybody to really understand. And the process of having it classed would take years. And while that's happening, we can't continue to improve on the technology on the Titan because then we would just have to bring them up to speed on this new technology. So we can't be held back by these standards, these class standards that, most people who bring passengers along on a sea vessel have to abide by, which is probably why they have to have them sign a waiver. Saying that they understand they could die, that something could go wrong. We're going to talk a little bit more about Stockton Rush and his personal opinion on, these sorts of standards and how they hold back innovation and technology. So retired Rear Admiral Chris Perry has commented that these modern submersible vessels are not like normal submarines. He said they're essentially kit cars. Quote, they are built in an experimental way, and this particular one is, shall we say, built from components you can get off the internet, from Amazon. They're very flimsy, very fragile, and you can't allow a lot to go wrong before you're in danger, end quote. Perry also commented that the area in the North Atlantic Ocean where this submersible went missing, the area where the Titanic wreckage is, it's very isolated, very deep, and unexplored. And the only way you could find an area on Earth, I guess not even on Earth, the only way you could find an area in the universe more remote is to go into space. G. Michael Harris, a specialist Titanic expedition leader who's previously worked on the Titan, also echoed some of these sentiments, saying, quote, more people have been to outer space than to this depth of the ocean. And when you're diving in these situations, you have to cross your T's and dot your I's. You have to do everything absolutely perfect and by the book. Throw in a bunch of tourists and a new sub that was created over the last several years. It's not looking good, end quote. And I agree. That's kind of bad news bears there. I think that maybe Stockton Rush and his colleagues got a little cocky. They constantly refer to people like Elon Musk, Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos. They are almost in a race with these men who, inarguably have the resources, unlimited resources basically, to make mistakes, to do a lot of testing, to take their time and get things right, and to make, maybe vessels that aren't super sound, but they're not bringing tourists in them before they've been tested thoroughly. So when you have somebody like Stockton Rush, who clearly looks up to people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson, and you have him basically trying to be the Elon Musk of the sea, you're going to see that there's going to be some hubris there. There's going to be some ego there. There's going to be competition there. And those things sometimes cause you to ignore your better judgment and kind of just push forward. You might say like, oh yeah, that's not exactly perfect. The system isn't exactly perfect, but we're figuring it out as we go along. It's like the early days of aviation, the early days of the space program. We're figuring out as we go along. I think they got lost because they don't have GPS, because they don't have any way of contacting the surface, or they're caught on something and trapped. Which is even worse, because if the submersible exploded, at least it's over quickly. But now you have to sit there as your oxygen runs out, as the air gets thick and foul, and you're getting sleepy and you can't breathe, knowing that the end is near and knowing that hope is very, very slim. And hope is slim, right? Because even if they find them, even if they find the location, it's going to take forever to get them up. They can't go down and get them. There's no way to get people safely out of a submersible that deep in the ocean. So they can't go down and get them. And there's no manned submersible that can go that deep. They have, robots and stuff, but nothing that can bring them up. They'd have to rely on like this ship from France or the one from Boston that could hopefully hook on and pull them up. But they have to find them first, and they haven't done that yet. So Smithsonian Magazine did a feature on Stockton Rush in 2019, and it was titled A Deep Dive into the Plans to Take Tourists to the Titanic. And in this article, Stockton Rush talks about the private market of submersibles dying. And he says, he found for two reasons that the private market was dying that were understandable but illogical, right? He's very cocky. So it says, first, subs gained a reputation for danger. Yeah. Working on offshore rigs in harsh locations like the North Sea, saturation divers who breathe gas mixtures to avoid diving sicknesses would be taken to subs to work at great depths. It was the world's most perilous job with frequent fatalities. It wasn't the subs' fault, says Rush. To save lives, the industry's moved towards using underwater robots to perform the same work. Second, tourist subs, which could once be skippered by anyone with a U.S. Coast Guard captain's license, were regulated by the Passenger Vessel Safety Act. Act of 1993, which imposed rigorous new manufacturing and inspection requirements and prohibited dives below 150 feet. This law was well-meaning, Rush says, but he believes it needlessly prioritized passenger safety over commercial innovation, a position a less adventurous submariner may find open to debate. Do you hear that? Needlessly prioritized passenger safety over commercial innovation. Do you see what I mean about the hubris? Like, oh, I've got to keep up with Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, so I don't need to prioritize patient safety over innovation, over progress. Stockton Rush says, quote, there hasn't been an injury in the commercial sub industry in over 35 years. It's obscenely safe because they have all of these regulations, but it also hasn't innovated or grown because they have all of these regulations. The U.S. government, meanwhile, has continued to favor space exploration over ocean research. NASA today gets about $10.5 billion annually for exploration, while NOAA's Office of Ocean Exploration and Research is allotted less than $50 million, a triumph of emotion over logic. Rush says half of the United States is underwater, and we haven't even mapped it yet. Emotion over logic, he says. That is a funny way of putting it, considering that I believe everything you're doing here is based on emotion over logic. We haven't mapped half of, the United States that's underwater because it's dangerous to do that, because people usually cannot safely go down to those depths, which is why they have regulations in place since 1993. So we can clearly see that Stockton Rush is interested in, one thing, which is innovation and progress as far as the technology of the submersible goes. He's using the paying customers to further that, but he does maybe get a little bit ahead of himself and maybe say, oh, this isn't a big deal. You don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about this. You don't have to worry about not being able to get to the surface. You don't have to worry about oxygen. He's thinking you don't have to worry about that stuff, while he still understands that there are potentially things that could happen that you would have to worry about, which is clearly what has happened now. Now, according to Rolling Stone magazine, searchers for the Titanic tourist sub heard banging from an area. Internal communications reveal. The article says, quote, a Canadian aircraft searching for the missing Titan submersible, which failed to return Sunday from an expedition to the wreckage of the Titanic, detected banging in 30-minute intervals coming from the area where the divers disappeared, according to internal email updates sent by the Department of Homeland Security's National Operations Center, obtained by Rolling Stone. How did Rolling Stone get that? RCC Halifax launched a P-8 Poseidon, which has underwater detection capabilities from the air, the DHS email reads. The PA deployed sonar buoys, which reported a contact in a position close to the distress position. The P-8 heard banging sounds in the area every 30 minutes. 4 hours later, additional sonar was deployed and banging was still heard. The announcement did not state what time the banging was heard or what was thought to have caused it. Now, an email sent Tuesday afternoon from the president of the travel and research group, the Explorers Club, stated, quote, it's being reported that at 2 a.m. local time on site that sonar detected potential tapping sounds at the location, implying crew may be alive and signaling. This was Tuesday afternoon. On Tuesday evening, an email update sent to DHS leadership and obtained by Rolling Stone stated that additional acoustic feedback was heard and will assist in vectoring surface assets and also indicating continued hope of survivors. The email added that a white rectangular object was located in the water and that a research vessel, originally diverted to investigate, was diverted to research the acoustic feedback instead. A DHS official told Rolling Stone that as of 5 hours ago, the Titan still had 40 hours of oxygen left and stated that the situation looks bleak, adding that they believe the banging was coming from the craft. As of an hour ago, 3 ships have joined in the search for missing submersible Titan, and a 2018 lawsuit alleged flaws in the craft's design. So the article from USNI News states that 3 ships arrived at St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada Wednesday morning, which is this morning that I'm recording this, to assist in search and rescue efforts for the submersible that went missing Sunday. A number of other ships are also making their way to the site, according to tweets from marine traffic. Early Wednesday morning, a Canadian aircraft detected underwater noises, leading to the use of remotely operated vehicles to find the source of the noise. However, the efforts did not find the noise origin, the Coast Guard said. So as of Wednesday morning, we still don't know where they are. Even though they're hearing noises and they think it's coming from the sub, they still can't find the location. This article continues, saying, quote, OceanGate previously received a number of warnings about its safety features. A former employee who was sued by the company in 2018 and then countersued wrote in his lawsuit that he had warned the company about a lack of testing of Titan's hull. David Lockridge was fired by OceanGate in 2018. OceanGate's lawsuit alleged that Lockridge breached his contract by revealing confidential information about the company to two other people. According to both lawsuits, Lockridge was fired after a meeting over his concerns about the Titan. One of Lockridge's stances is that OceanGate should have done a scan of the Titan's hull instead of using acoustic monitoring, which is what the company's engineer said was better for finding flaws. In his complaint, Lockridge also alleged that the submersible's viewport was certified to withstand pressure at 1,300 meters, not 4,000 meters, which was the intended depth. The paying passengers would not be aware and would not be informed of this experimental design, the lack of non-destructive testing of the hull, or that hazardous flammable materials were being used within the submersible, according to Lockridge's lawsuit. In OceanGate's complaint in the lawsuit, the company's lawyer alluded to a potential safety issue when writing that a single scratch on a titanium hemisphere, components that are meant to be able to have clear viewing ports without a gasket and still be water sealed at 4,000 meters, would render it ineffective. Wow. A single scratch on a titanium hemisphere would render it ineffective. According to the New York Times, OceanGate also received a letter from experts in Manned Underwater Vehicles Committee of the Marine Technology Society about concerns with Titan's development and plans to go down to the Titanic wreck. This letter, signed by 38 experts, included the concern that the submersible was not certified by an agency, despite the company claiming it could meet safety standards. From this NPR article, Will Conan, the chair of the Marine Technology Society's Submarine Committee, said, quote, "It hasn't surprised us. We've been aware of this project for some time and have had some concerns," end quote. It says in March 2018, after one of the International Industry Group's annual conferences, Conan drafted a letter to OceanGate's CEO, Stockton Rush, expressing unanimous concern on behalf of its members about the development of the Titan and its planned Titanic expeditions. Our apprehension is that the current experimental approach adopted by OceanGate could result in negative outcomes, from minor to catastrophic, that would have serious consequences for everyone in the industry, he wrote. Conan continued on saying, quote, "Most of the companies in this industry that are building submersibles and deep submersibles follow a fairly well-established framework of certification and verification and oversight through classification societies," he said. And that was the root of OceanGate's project, is that they were going to go solo, going without the type of official oversight, and that brought a lot of concerns. So basically, as of now, the most recent update we have is from the U.S. Coast Guard. Captain Jamie Frederick of the United States Coast Guard said that remotely operated vehicles are searching for the source of the sounds, which were heard on Tuesday and again on Wednesday morning. So these sounds are the banging coming from what they hope to be the submersible. But a team of experts is examining the noises to determine if they might be from the missing vessel, but so far the analysis has been inconclusive, he said. Captain Fredericks reiterated that the mission continues to be a search and rescue operation, although officials have said they are operating under the assumption that the submersible would run out of oxygen sometime Thursday morning, but they still need to have hope. One of the ships heading to the search area is that French-operated robot, which is capable of operating at the depth where the Titanic sits, but that is not expected to reach the scene until Wednesday evening. I also read this article on the BBC about certain structural issues that the Titan submersible might have. So this is coming from Dr. Nikolai Rotterdam, who's a lecturer in marine biology at the University of Portsmouth, and he said, quote, "Typically, the part of deep-sea submersibles housing the humans is a titanium sphere around 2 meters in diameter," end quote. To withstand the immense pressure of the deep, you need super strong materials to resist the weight of water above that's pressing down on you. Carbon fiber is cheaper than titanium or steel and is extremely strong, but it's largely untested for deep-sea vessels like the Titan. In an interview last year, OceanGate's CEO Rush Stockton said, quote, "Carbon fiber is used successfully in yachts and in aviation, but it has not been used in crewed submersibles," end quote. And remember that guy that got fired from OceanGate, Lockridge, in the court documents, he claimed that the hull, which is apparently made out of carbon fiber, had not been properly tested, where it's placed under extreme pressures, and analyzed to look for potential problems. He claimed that trials on a smaller scale model of the sub had revealed flaws in the carbon under pressure testing. A December 28 statement from OceanGate said that the Titan had completed a 4,000-meter dive, which completely validates OceanGate's innovative engineering and the construction of Titan's carbon fiber and titanium hull. In a 2020 interview with GeekWire, Mr. Rush said tests were conducted which revealed the Titan's hull showed signs of cyclic fatigue. In May 2021 court filing, the company said Titan had undergone more than 50 test dives, including to the equivalent depth of the Titanic in deep waters of the Bahamas and in a pressure chamber. The shape of the Titan is also unusual. The hull of a deep diving sub is usually spherical, which means it receives an equal amount of pressure at every point, but Titan's hull is tube-shaped, so the pressure would not be equally distributed. Titan is quite a different deep-sea submersible compared to those used in research, said Dr. Rotterman. Whether or not this design with composite materials represents a structural weakness would be for engineers to determine, however, she added. So basically what I'm hearing, that's pretty much all we have. We're just going to keep hearing from people who are like, we knew this was a bad idea. We warned them. We're just going to keep hearing from those people. But what I'm hearing is this was experimental. It was an experimental design. They used experimental materials. However, Rush said that they did work with NASA and stuff. So I feel like, NASA would know. But maybe NASA wouldn't know because NASA is used to going into space, not in the ocean, where I think probably the environment's a little different. Like the pressure in the ocean is really, really, really bad, really hard to sort of get around, really hard to design around, which is why usually humans do not go down there. So this is just very tragic overall. I will keep you updated if anything new comes out.
A tragic end to a frantic search.
This morning, an ROV, or remote operated vehicle, from the vessel Horizon Arctic discovered the tail cone of the Titan submersible.
The debris of the missing submersible Titan was found about 1,600 feet from the Titanic wreckage.
This is an incredibly unforgiving environment down there on the seafloor, and the debris is consistent with a catastrophic implosion of the vessel.
The cause of the implosion is still unknown, but all 5 people aboard were killed. OceanGate founder Stockton Rush, billionaire adventurer Hamish Harding, Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood and his 19-year-old son Suleiman, and French explorer Paul-Henri Nargeolet.
Yeah, John, tonight a Navy official told CBS News that the Navy detected what it called an acoustic anomaly consistent with an implosion after the Titan lost contact on Sunday. The official says the information was shared with the Coast Guard, which used it to narrow down the search area.
And it's honestly a tragedy. And if you're out there making fun of these people, if you're out there posting mean things on social media, please remember they have wives, they have children, they have friends and family, people who care about them, people who love them, people who are literally sitting here suffocating with them as every hour passes. So I would ask for you to just be respectful, at least in the comment section of my video. If you want to be a dickhead on your own social media, then I cannot stop you, go ham, but at least in the comment section of my video, can you please just be a human being, for a short amount of time? But that's it. That's all I have. I'm very, very, very sad about this, and I'm going to be watching it, and I have been watching it as updates go out. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you so much for listening to this. I know it's still developing, and I know I don't know everything, and I know that things are literally happening by the minute, but at least we have a base knowledge for what's going on, and when we update, we'll have, that base knowledge to work off of. So thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it. Share it if you think it's worth sharing. Subscribe if you haven't already. Stay kind, stay beautiful, and stay safe, and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye.
Straight down, and that river runs deep, the mountains get steep, and the voices getting too loud. All these feelings I've buried, it's looking like a cemetery. They're going back from the grave, calling out my name, better say a Hail Mary. Well, you don't know how deep it goes until it's getting you slowly, so you got to let it go. I got blood on the strings.